overcoming pain, I think, is something that every one of us has to learn to do.
For everybody that's watching, I am pumped to have Pastor John Hansen on the show today. So John is what I consider a world-class performer. He's an incredible pastor of a large church in Murrieta. He's a husband, a father, and an incredible man of God. He's recently also became the on-staff pastor for Rise Up Kings, just supporting Rise Up Kings and what we're doing in our mission. And so, brother, I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, man, I'm so glad to be a part of it. It's awesome to join you this Friday morning. And man, I hope we can dive into some content and bring some wisdom and help to anybody.
Yeah, brother. I remember when we first met, I had stopped by your church, Centerpoint Church in Murrieta. We lived in Temecula, and we were just checking out different churches, and walked in, and several thousand people, and we not in the. I know their church was several thousand people, and so we walked in, and there was a presence of the Holy Spirit that was just there. We could feel it, me and Jessica, and so we just knew, like, wow, something's different about this church. And as you were speaking up on stage, and we heard you speak, I realized you actually had a lot of wisdom, like a lot of godly wisdom. I consider you a younger man, right? And so you're not up there in years yet, wisdom wise. However, you have that many years of wisdom, as we heard more and more of your conversations, and you brought a message that was, I would say, more focused on connecting with people's hearts as opposed to only just knowledge. So you were able to bring the word, but also connect it to what they were dealing with in a really powerful way. And so I remember reaching out to you. I don't recall how I did it, but I reached out to you. We scheduled a lunch. I'm like, hey, I got to get to know this guy. This guy's on fire, like literally like bringing fire down. And so I want to go connect with him. We had lunch with me, you, and Jessica, and got to really connect and learn more about you. You got to learn more about us. And that's kind of where our friendship started, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you gave that reflection, that what you came away from coming into Centerpoint was that you felt the power of the Holy Spirit, because that is something I pray for almost every day, but especially every time the church is gathering. My prayer is not, God, help me to be, clever in what I say, but instead, God, I want everyone who comes and gathers here to get a touch from you, because I know that it's really the power of God and his spirit working inside of people that is going to bring the life, going to bring the victory, ultimately bring the capacity to rise up, bring the capacity, the ability to endure, to persevere, and to achieve, and to make progress and get where someone wants to be. It's the power of the Spirit of God. And so I'm so glad that that's what hit you, because that's what I'm praying will hit everybody. And the more any of us that have an inclination towards faith can really grab hold of that experience, the experience of the power of the Spirit of God, I think that's going to lead to the greatest ability to overcome that we need.
Yeah, I'm curious. And I felt that even in our meeting that we had at lunch, and so I knew I wanted to stay connected with you. I didn't know what capacity, at that point, and so it was neat seeing. Basically, this year I was at a point where I'm like, you know what, I need, right? We have business on point, our training, our development, our teaching with Rise Up Kings. We have the physical side on point. We have a lot of our emotional and our deeper personal development work, and spiritually we were there, but I wanted to make sure we were grounded at a whole nother level faith wise, and that I was being mentored at a higher level faith wise. I wanted to develop, and I wanted our guys to develop even more spiritually through Rise Up Kings, through our mastermind and our event. And so I asked you, hey, are you down to support this at a little bit of a higher level, like a little more involvement? And so what was the reason? I'm curious, what was the reason you decided to support on that? I don't know if I asked that before, but yeah, what made you, because you have a lot going on.
Yeah, I think because at the core, I really believe in what you're doing, like the four pillars in particular, and just recognizing the value of nurturing and strengthening those four pillars of family, of faith, of finance, of fitness. And I have very personal reasons for why all of those things matter to me. But the reality is that you want to reach men, and in particular entrepreneurs and business people. And as a leader of a church, one of the things that I love to do is to get to go and visit a guy who's running a business and just hear about it, learn about it, figure out what's going on. And it's because every small business, medium business, bigger business delivers value, delivers solutions, delivers an economic impact, delivers a place for meaningful engagement. And I love that. And I recognize that leaders of businesses in particular, whether they've got 10 employees or 150 or many more than that, need to be strengthened, need to be able to rise up, need to be able to have a core that is marked by integrity and spiritual strength and a physical stature that can carry them and a family that's going to provide a foundation for what that business can accomplish. And so because I recognize that you want to see entrepreneurs in particular and business leaders and organizational leaders rise up, I just felt like, man, that is something I can get behind. I've experienced the best things in my life when I've been able to come together with other brothers in particular and form a close-knit bond where we can do what the scriptures say, iron sharpening iron. And I recognize that we can find some of that in our church community, but in some ways we also need to find a broader network that isn't just based on business and isn't just based on personal success, but has at its core a desire to be spiritually grounded and spiritually lifted at the same time. And I feel like that's what's at the heart of Rise Up Kings, and your vision for it is to really see as many other men in particular rise up and be who God's really originally designed them to be. I love that. And I just felt like, man, if I get to be a part of it, I want to be. So yeah.
Love it, man. I love it. I appreciate that you've provided a profound impact on the guys. Every time you speak at our masterminds, they're all in on it. I regularly get messages from the guys, so it's pretty cool, dude. I appreciate that. I'd love to go a little bit personal right now in this conversation. I'm always curious how a pastor knew his calling was being a pastor, or how you got to that journey. I'd love to hear your spiritual journey, right? When did you come to Christ? Where did you come to Christ? And then how did you know, and what led you to becoming a pastor?
All right. Well, so my story is probably like a lot of people's. There's been some ups and downs, and there's maybe a part A and a part B. And some people have a real clean, like everything was bad, I found Jesus, and then he changed my life and everything was better. Mine was more like being a kid in middle school, high school, and I did give my life to Jesus, really and legitimately. But there wasn't a whole lot of discipleship that was taking place. There wasn't much iron sharpening iron. And then I kind of fell by the wayside and got myself into just a bunch of stuff. I mean, drugs and partying, and then a girlfriend who ends up pregnant. And this is not the woman who I'm married to now, right? And my dreams were falling apart. I got kicked out of the program I was a part of at Rutgers University because of being so distracted. And that brokenness, when everything was just falling apart on me, it woke me up. And when that was happening, it was the people of God. There's this college fellowship of Christians that really took me under their wings. And these guys took care of me when I was broken, loved me back to wholeness, and spent time with me, helping me heal on the inside, and discipled me for real. And I wouldn't have known it at that time, but what was happening was my calling was being forged at that time, because I felt in the back of my mind something like, what these people are doing for me right now, I want to do as much as I can and for as many people as possible for the rest of my life. And looking back, I can say that was my experience of being called into ministry. And I ended up going to China as a missionary for a couple of years and doing all kinds of different roles as a volunteer in churches. But then, when I was 26, there was the opportunity to become the worship pastor of a church. And in that context, to be able to love people that were broken back to health and wholeness, and the rest kind of followed from there. But at the heart of it, for me, it was about the experience I had of being discipled, of being poured into, of being loved when I was broken so I could become whole and strong again. That is what I want to, and I feel like I've been blessed by God to be able to be a part of for almost a couple of decades now. So that's that's my story on the salvation front.
Yeah, and didn't you start a ministry that was focused around mentoring or discipling, or something in your church? I don't recall if.
Well, we've done a lot of those kinds of things. One of the things that we started a couple of years ago was a school of ministry, and it
Okay.
just it comes from the fact that when I came to the church that I lead, there were roughly 50 or so people at the beginning, and just me. And over the years, I've really needed to build a team. And right before COVID, we had as many as 75 people on our staff, and you just don't find people out there, at that scale in ministry that quickly. And so I needed to train people. And there's this verse in Philippians where the Apostle Paul says, put into practice everything that you've seen in me, and then God will bless you with his grace. And so Philippians 4:9, and I started this thing, I called it P49, based on that verse. And I just decided, hey, I can't just go out there and find pastors and ministers. I'm gonna make them. In the power of the Spirit of God, we're gonna raise people up to become pastors and ministers in our church through this P49 program. And yeah, it's just a part of what I feel like God's called me to do, is to continue to raise people up. We raise people and we release people. I mean, there's 10 or so people, guys that are around the country right now leading churches that spent time with me, and I had an opportunity to pour into and do my part to raise up. And that's part of what I am grateful for, is that I get to have fruit that grows on other people's trees. So that's a part of that mentoring and raising people up dynamic.
Love it. Love it. So good. It's so good. It's so needed right now. There's right, one of the reasons Rise Up Kings was started, there's such a need for mentorship and guidance on what does it mean to be a man? And same thing around being a pastor. What does it mean to be a pastor?
Hmm.
Right? What do you need? What tools? How do you get equipped? And
Yeah.
so we're doing that same thing with business owners, right? Equipping them with what they need to be successful and to live a life that glorifies God in the way that they operate and the way they grow their business. So I love meeting other men that are focused on that and have that kind of similar calling.
Yeah,
Um,
and part of what drives me is actually my own experience with my own father, right? I mean, because and when even the name of our movement, this Rise Up Kings movement, it beckons, it speaks to something deeper, that there is a need for men to figure out how to overcome whatever we're facing. Our calling from God is to find courage and strength to overcome it. I think about my own father, and my dad got polio when he was a child, or a young 13 years old, 14 years old, and was paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. So I only ever knew a dad who was paralyzed from his waist down. And that's back in the 70s, 80s, and people didn't take kindly to guys like that. I mean, there was a lot of ridicule and whatnot. He would be thought of as a cripple or whatever. This is before ADA. But I saw my dad overcome. I saw him not let that grind him down. I saw him dig deep and figure out, okay, he's got to walk with braces on his legs and canes with arm straps, and he would just do it. And he would take the stairs on purpose, just sometimes to prove the point, like grabbing hold of a railing and pulling himself up just to prove the point. But achieved great things in his life and his business in particular, taking on challenges in business when it seemed like maybe a guy like him shouldn't be. And that kind of fires something up inside of me when I think about how much of an impact he had, and it had everything to do with just grabbing life like a bull by the horns and saying, I'm going for it, and I'm not backing down, and I'm gonna keep going for it. And for my own dad, I saw it happen in the middle. It was a midlife crisis kind of a thing when he was in his late 40s, and this guy, our neighbor named Yoshio, this older dude, shared the gospel with him, and my dad gave his life to Jesus. And his overcoming journey began to include the spiritual victory that changed even the nature of his personality for the better. And so I put the two together, and I think, man, this is what we need more of: men who are able to rise up, able to overcome whatever we've got to overcome, because all of us are going to have things we're going to have to rise up for and in, and show up better within, and find victory over.
Man, that story gave me the chills of just knowing what it would take, right, to be a father and not be able to do all the things that you'd want to do with your kids. That'd be intense. That would be and so what's interesting is I've seen you go through some pretty intense health challenges and some struggles. And I kind of watch it and I see how you handle it. And uh I've I've admired and been very intrigued that through these significant health challenges that you've had this positivity and this kind of focus and this overcoming attitude. I'm very curious if that was related at all to what your dad saw, to what you saw with your dad also. So, and this ties back like being a father, right? Being a father, I think it's important that we do share the challenges and the struggles that we have with our kids. We don't have to be Superman. So one of my favorite things to do is when I'm sitting with my son late at night when I put him to bed, I'll go lay down with him and I'll tell him stories. But it's not stories of me, being a champion always. It's the challenges I've gone through, the struggles when I was messed with in middle school, like the things I had to go through, the things I messed up in, like. So he can see the real human version of myself, which would hopefully inspire him to kind of push through, as opposed to being this stoic, dad, which doesn't show emotion and doesn't show any of the real major challenges that we all go through.
Yeah.
So it's
You
interesting.
know,
Yeah.
for me, like, I think my kids have seen some of my journey up close and personal. I look fine on the outside, but I have a genetic condition called neurofibromatosis type 2, and it's this thing. It's congenital, meaning it's in your genes, meaning you can't really do anything about it. It's just, and I get tumors that grow inside of my nerves, in the peripheral nerves of my body, in my case, and they cause immense pain. I mean, you got nerves that are these little things like a little tiny wire. You get something the size of a marble growing inside of it. It causes a lot of pain, chronic pain. And so I've been for more than 2 decades kind of dealing with that. I've had 6 surgeries and to have tumors taken out. I've had radiation treatment for 6 weeks, and it's never fun. And there's 2 parts of it. One is the overcoming the physical pain, but there's also the overcoming the spiritual pain, because there's both. And I believe and have seen supernatural healing happen for people. And I believe and I minister in that way. And yet personally, I struggle with this immense amount of chronic pain all the time, and dealing with all these surgeries. It can be a spiritual mountain to climb, for sure, because you can face some dark days and some despair, and you're fighting pain. And sometimes when you're fighting chronic pain, you do just want to give up. And one of the things I love about Rise Up Kings is that one of the 4 pillars is fitness. And I know that for me, it's not just about like, hey, because I want to be the buffest guy out there. It's not even about that. It's about recognizing this really is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Like this is the physical carriage for whatever it is I'm going to do on planet Earth. And it hits home for me personally that this making this a pillar of life, like taking care of the physical reality of who I am. For me, it's personal, because I have this condition that I can't do anything about. It's genetic and causes a lot of pain and disturbances. So all the more I find myself going, and I want to make sure that I can do whatever I can to take care of it, if I can, on the proactive side. And so my story with my kids has been marked by them seeing me on many evenings just wrestling with physical pain, but still finding a way to show up and be there at the games and do the camping trips and take those family vacations and push through. And for me, I'm not using narcotics to treat my pain. I won't go there. And I find myself finding unique ways by the power of the Holy Spirit to overcome the challenge of physical pain and physical distress that are kind of like like a Jesus Jedi mind trick almost.
What's an example? You got me curious now. What's an example of 1 or 2 of these things that are that you use?
Yeah. So one is, and I might get myself in trouble with some sort of extremely religiously minded people.
I figured. I knew that when I asked that you were going to. Yeah,
but yeah, here goes. So one is to I'm going to spend some time in God's presence, and we're fine with that. But I'm going to visualize, and I visualize my physical body, and I visualize the exact part of my body where there's pain. And with me, it's because of tumors. And I speak to that part of my body silently, and I'm taking deep breaths and slowly letting out those deep breaths. And I speak to those parts of my body, and I literally say, switch off now to the pain. I know that sounds bizarre, but I find that God empowers that. The Spirit of God who is living within me, Christ in me, the hope of glory, right, is empowering that moment for me to take authority over this domain, which the scriptures call the temple of the Holy Spirit, and speak to the thing that's causing the distress. And I'm deeply breathing. I'm visualizing the place where there's the pain, and I'm speaking to it, and I'm saying, switch off now. And it may take a few minutes, and I'm not saying that it magically makes everything go away, but I can absolutely feel this sense of God's hand coming in those moments and allowing pain to decrease so that I can regain my composure and then be ready to show up for whatever I've got to show up for, because I got to show up for a lot. And I'm not going to stop showing up just because I have a physical thing that's trying to prevent that. So that's one of the things.
Yeah, we're big into, so what I'm hearing you say is that you, just because you experience some pain, right, you're still actually showing up, right? And so many people, there's a, I feel like as a generation and as a culture, we've become mentally weak, meaning we just struggle showing up when we feel pain. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm off today. Hey, I'm not going to be the father. I'm going to go watch TV. I'm feeling off. Like, it's not even physical pain. I am in a funk. I'm not going to do what I'm supposed to do. So it's this mental weakness. Like, you have developed some mental strength, and God's given you this through everything that you've gone through. I was interviewing it was a military a vet, and I asked him, I said, hey, so from your perspective, people that have joined the military, are they more mentally tough than the average human being? He's like, hands down, 100% of the time, they can handle more than any regular human being.
Wow.
Right. And so we can develop our mental toughness. And so you've developed a mental toughness where you say, hey, I'm able to, and God's given you this strength. And I think God's given you these circumstances too, or allowed some things to happen where you have incredible mental toughness, where you can say, hey, I'm experiencing some pain. I'm going to go push through it, do what I have to, and still be able to show up because it's not going away. Right.
Yeah. Okay. And so on that note, one of the scriptures that I love, and sometimes it's like, oh, why is that the truth? But it says, your faith is in Peter, your faith, which is worth greater worth than gold, is being tested and purified by the struggles, by the pain, by the difficulty, by the challenges. And I think a lot of times we just want them to go away. I just want the pain, the struggle, the challenge, the difficulty to go away. But God's word literally says, yeah, no, because that's the gym. Like, that's the thing that's going to strengthen what is actually of greater worth than gold, which is your faith. Okay. And that's why it's another reason why I'm not trying to plug Rise Up Kings, but seriously, like the fourth pillar, the faith pillar, matters so much, and that it's not about making hard things go away. It's about learning how to receive the supernatural strength of God to be able to show up in the hard things and let them make us better. I mean, that's like at the core of it, to believe God for a persevering, enduring strength to make it through, and to allow the hard things to make us better so we can show up and make our world, our business, our family, our relationships better. That faith pillar has to be worked on. It has to be valued. It has to be understood, and it has to include some room for letting the hard things do their work. Jesus said it. You're going to have, in this world, you will have trouble. You will. I guarantee it. That's not a verse that I see on a lot of plaques on somebody's wall in knit crochet by someone's grandma, but it's the truth. In this world, you will have trouble. Take heart. I've overcome the world. And this is our Jesus. And so, man, we take that to heart, embrace the hard things, let our faith get strengthened through them, because then by our faith, we're able to reach into the well of who our God is and the wisdom our God has for us and the power he is willing to give us. We bring that into our lives and into our enterprise, into our leadership, into our families, and it becomes better than it would have ever been otherwise without those struggles.
Boom. You need your own podcast, brother. Dropping fire, man. This is powerful. So one of my favorite verses is James 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't know if you're familiar with those ones, but consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And so many times we push off these struggles, we resist them, we fight them, why God? It's like, no. This is actually developing your mental toughness. This is developing your strength. This is allowing you to be more mature, more complete. When we fight the struggles of business, right? The struggles of our marriage, the struggles of our of health, like we literally just push back. And in reality, like the true and learning to embrace and say, okay, this is what it is. And this is going to develop me, and having a different mindset around that scripturally based can change a man's life.
That's for sure. You know, you asked before, like, hey, what are one or two of those techniques that you're using that they're like those Jesus Jedi mind tricks regarding pain? And a second one is this, and it's going to sound so silly, but really it's comes from the verse that you just shared, count it all joy, which that's one of those verses that you have I have like a love-hate relationship with. It's like, please don't quote that to me when I'm in the middle of it, but it is eternally. I embrace it, right? But the second technique, one of them is what I would call simply the smile technique. And so 10 years ago, 8 years ago, you know, when I would have pain from these nerve tumors, I would, you know, wince a lot. Like I'd be like, oh, because it would sometimes feel, and it does sometimes feel like getting, you know, stabbed with a dagger and the knife's being twisted. And so your natural response is to wince, to go like, oh, like that. And I realized it doesn't really do me any good to wince. And so what I started doing instead is smiling. Like when I'm feeling pain, I'm just going like this. and even laughing. And sometimes my wife will see me like I'm just walking around the house like this, like, and she'll be like, what's funny? I'm like, nothing, I'm just in pain. And she's like, what? She's come to recognize that it's what I do. But what I'm doing is through my body, through a somatic exercise in my body, I'm telling my interior reality and the cells within my body, there's a different way to interpret this. And I'm stimulating endorphins and dopamine by the sheer act of choosing to smile and laugh a little bit. And so it is literally a natural pain relief technique that has a physiological component. And I find that when I do that, I'm able to shift the level of pain. I'm able to shift my own ability to persevere and endure. So anyway, I wanted to throw that one down. Number two, that I was going to mention too, man, I'm writing a book, and it's a book that'll probably get in trouble with a bunch of church people, but I'm writing it anyway. And it's called Pain in the Ass: How to Live with Pain and Overcome It. And
okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be real frank, I mean, part of the reality is that I had a bunch of tumors in my ass, you know, to be honest. And I need to be able to use language like that because it's my reality. And for anybody out there who's, kind of hung up that I use that word, it's in the Bible. You got to use the King James, but it's in the Bible. So we're all right. But overcoming pain, I think, is something that every one of us has to learn to do. And there are ways, I think, that God has shown me that, like the couple that I've just talked about, that I think can help a lot of people.
So powerful, because I know a lot of people that struggle with pain, and they don't know how to properly handle it. And then and I hope in that book, I mean, I'm not telling you how to write it, but right, where it's everybody at some point comes to God and says, hey, why me? Right?
Yeah.
Why me? Why am I going through this pain? And so being able to kind of reframe that and come to Jesus and learn to say, okay, well, and what is your perspective? So my perspective, is around the painful things that happen in life, not just physical pain, right? I mean, losing a loved one, just going through emotional pain, divorce, these different struggles that we go through. So sometimes physical pain is much you can deal with a little bit easier than losing a loved one. So what is the so my perspective on that is like this is, I mean, it is, I hate to say it, but that is what this may not comfort me in the moment, but at the end of the day, my from reading scripture, understanding it, my knowledge, the wisdom, the discernment that God's given me is these moments make me better. These moments build character. These moments allow me to connect with other people emotionally. Like if I haven't lost a loved one, I do not know what it means to lose a loved one. There's no empathy there. You can't have empathy for something that you haven't fully experienced. You can say, hey, I'm sorry. You don't know what it feels like. And so I believe this is, I mean, and that's what I mean by character. So that loss, that struggle, that pain has developed a unique character inside of me where I can connect at a different level. So, I mean, it does two things, right? It hurts us, creates pain, but then it also puts us in a unique situation where we're now able to connect with other people, and we've developed character, sometimes some mental strength and toughness. So I believe like the things we go through, they really, I can stay mad, but only for a moment because I know in reality it's I'm evolved. This is making me better. So it's kind of hard to stay mad like long term because I know it's just this thorn in my side that's
Right.
creating and developing me. So what is your perspective on that? And I say that and I'm curious if I'm off on it or if there's some truth to that. So I'm wide open.
You're right on, man. And I mean, I think there's been a lot of wise ones that have kind of processed kind of question before. And one of the things that I think helps all of us is to convert our why to what. It's not that there isn't a place for the why, but when we don't necessarily get to have firm answers to the why, it is helpful to move to the what. Instead of why are these bad things happening, it's what am I going to learn through these things that are happening, and how am I going to take what is happening to me and convert it into something that can bring value and help to somebody. That allows us to move from victim status to agent status. Just that simple question, moving from why we're a victim to, well, what am I going to learn and how am I going to allow this to become something that takes me further into helping other people. That moves us from victim to agent, and we need that. Just that simple move of empowerment allows us to feel less trapped by the pain and the question of the why. And I think that part of what we're going to see when we die, right? We're gonna cross into eternity and be in the presence of God. And you've heard this said before, but as soon as we get there, so to speak, we're gonna just open our eyes and go, oh. And yes, there's going to be a moment when the why will be answered. It doesn't tend to be here and now, but we get some clues. We get, you open the first few pages of the Bible and you find that God, the creator of heaven and earth, wanted there to be real freedom because he didn't want us to be automatons. He didn't want us to be robots. And so he gave us real freedom. And in that freedom, we experience the capacity to do wrong, and in a way that goes beyond our imaginations. In this prototype realm, the scriptures call the Garden of Eden, there were choices made in that freedom that ultimately allowed a virus into the system, and that virus corrupted everything that we know. But the alternative would have been for humanity to be robots that did not have freedom, and therefore would not actually be able to love, and would not actually to be able to have the capacity to create beauty and deliver in those ways. And God wanted a universe where real beauty could be brought about, real love could be chosen, but there had to be freedom. And we struggle with the result. But this is why I love the gospel, man, is that God decided at the very same time as freedom fallen took place to enact the solution through Jesus. And so, and we get both, right? We get the opportunity to experience freedom. And if we're fallen and experience the fallenness of freedom, we also get uh, to be found by the love of God and be saved. I mean, I'm so grateful for the gospel. I know we weren't trying to be having a church service right here, but I felt like preaching for a second.
No, it's so necessary because we need both those messages, right? How to overcome and the Lord is the way. Like that's the path. Like the gospel is the path, right? To all of this. And so man, so much wisdom, so much power in this conversation. What's one thing? So we have a lot of guys that are watching this. We have some women, but a lot of guys that are watching this and listening to this podcast and trying to become better men, better fathers, better husbands, better men of God. What's one something you'd like to leave them with?
You know, this is something that is a personal passion of mine, and it is that I continue to be this kind of person, the kind of person that would live a Jesus first, word and presence every day kind of life. Because if I can be, and if everyone who's listening and taking part in this conversation right now could just decide this is who I'm going to be. I'm going to be a Jesus first, word and presence every day kind of person. What I'm doing is I'm filling myself up on the inside so that I am coming into whatever situation the day throws at me. And my family has as an experience, challenges, awesome breakthroughs, victory, everything in between. I'm coming with the tank full. Jesus first. That means when I wake up in the morning, instead of hitting Instagram and TikTok and wasting time there, instead of just clicking on the news or going out in the garage and watching the news on TV or something, no, I'm going to be Jesus first. Like as soon as I wake up, good morning, Jesus. Like really on my mind. I would challenge anybody listening to me right now, try that. First thing you wake up, good morning, Jesus. And he is willing to step right in and be in that kind of a close relationship, and it's empowering. Try it, watch what happens. Good morning, Jesus. And then for me, it's about word and presence. That is, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to read the scriptures every day at first before I read anything else. Why? Because I believe that it's one of the ways that God speaks and brings wisdom and help, but it's not, I don't want to just click the box like, hey, I read this many chapters of the Bible. I want to, even if I read just 2 verses, but I find God nurturing me through that, then I've done it. Word. And then presence. I want to sit in the presence of God and be present to God myself, and allow my own spirit within me to become alert to who God is and what he's saying to me and what is happening inside of me. Word and presence, God's presence, my own ability to be present to God and present to myself, aware of what I'm up against and what I need to confront, and word and presence every day. That changes the interior atmosphere of who you are. And if you can begin to do this, to be a Jesus first, word and presence, every day kind of a person, I believe that you're going to see an arc in your life of transformation and progress and lift, because I see that God does that through this simple discipline: Jesus first, word and presence every day. I'm hoping that I can continue to live this kind of life. And I would ask anyone listening to me right now, give it a try if you don't already. If you have 5 minutes, do that for 5 minutes. If you have an hour, do it for an hour. But Jesus first, word and presence every day. It's life-changing.
So good. Yeah, I'm big into personal development and growth, and my morning routine always started with reading my goals and getting clear on what I want to accomplish and all those things. I did that for years, so I'm very disciplined in that arena. And the Bible was always after. I was like, hey, I'm too tired to read the Bible right when I wake up. So I'm going to go do these other things that maybe are a little bit more interesting or intriguing or whatever it may be. And so I would have the Bible towards the end of my morning routine.
Yeah.
And so about I call it a couple of years ago, I switched. I'm like, no, God has to be first. Jesus has to be first. So I switched. And the first thing that I do in the morning is hop up, grab my coffee, and then read the Bible. And so that has completely shifted everything for me, where now I have this hunger to read every morning, Before it was like, oh, I got to fit the Bible. And now I hunger and thirst to actually read the word each day. I wish I had more time. Like, I literally wish I had more time to
Yeah.
spend. Some days I make more time, but that shifted everything for me. It did cause me to rise in
Yeah.
my love and my connection and my desire for the Lord. And so that resonates with you. And especially those other two things. That I don't initially think of Jesus when I wake up. However, 100% open to trying that and would love, and I know the results would come through that, and then spending time in his presence. So
Yeah, man.
beautifully said, man. Well, I appreciate your time on this podcast and the wisdom that you brought on these nuggets, and I pray for continued impact in the people that you lead and the church and with Rise Up Kings. That's everything you're doing. You have a lot going on. So thanks for jumping on and taking your time, and we'll talk soon, brother.
Thanks, man.